What is up, guys? Welcome to episode number 3 of Storytellers. And if you caught it earlier, we were having some technical difficulties. We were trying to do it on Facebook Live, but the universe did not want us to be on Facebook Live today. So I am joined today by a buddy of mine, Kevin Turner, and I'm going to let Kevin really tell his story, but just so you understand what you're about to listen to, Kevin has been in corrections for over 20 years. Over 20 years. This man is crazy. And we met last month. So we were both at the John Maxwell certification, and one of the nights was mastermind night. And so there's probably, I don't know, 1,400, 1,500 people in this room, and they broke us up into tables of 8, right, where we actually learned how to facilitate a mastermind. And Kevin happened to be at my table, or I happened to be at Kevin's table. I think you were sitting down before I was. And man, we just connected. You know, some of the things that you said resonated with me. Some of the things that I said resonated with you. And it was just one of those times where, like, you meet somebody, you feel like they're going to be your friend, and here we are a month later talking on video together. So, man, I'm so appreciative of you for you taking some time to jump on with me.
Man, absolutely. I appreciate you welcoming me into your audience. I hope I can add value to your audience, man. I'm excited. It's good to reconnect once again.
Yeah,
that was a great time we had at the mastermind.
Man, it was incredible, and we'll talk about it a little bit at the end. Sure. Give kind of a little taste. But Kev, tell us, give us a quick flyover of your story. Where are you from? What'd your upbringing look like?
I'm the youngest of 4 boys. I was born and raised in Lawton, Oklahoma, small military town.
Yeah.
I actually was born in '69. My father retired from the military in 1971. So I was one of those oops babies. So,
okay.
Just being the youngest of 4 boys, it was unique for me. I don't have the wow factoring background story most people have. I came from a 2-parent home. My father was retired from the military. My mother was a praying mother in the church. She was a musician, church every Sunday.
Yeah.
But I did cross that intersection that most of us cross along our journey sometime in life. So being the youngest of 4 boys, I was always in the shadows of my brothers. I have 4 older brothers. One's 6 years older than me. One's 9 years older than me. And then my oldest brother is 12 years older than me. So wow, the age difference for me was pretty impactful. And so I grew up down the street playing with my friends down the street more than I did with my brothers. But real quickly, once I got in high school, I struggled identifying with who is Kevin, because I was always known as that's little Tyrone because I look like Tyrone, or that's Mike because I played basketball like my brother Mike. And so in that struggle, I had a pretty sour attitude as a teenager.
I bet. Yeah.
But man, like I say, my upbringing, I can't complain about it. Awesome parents, 2-parent household home. And so I don't have that backstory that a lot of people where I work, they have a different backstory. But unique thing,
you've got your story.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Which is really all that matters.
Absolutely. And so right after high school, I didn't complete college. I was an athlete, injury prone. So my basketball career was very short. I didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise, but I've always been around helping people, serving people in the church, in the community.
Yeah.
Both of my parents were active in the community, so that was instilled inside of me. So because I didn't finish college, I ended up working at a juvenile detention center and a mental health facility psychiatric unit for teens.
Wow.
And when I got introduced to that field is when I really learned that I enjoyed not only being around people, but helping young teens, young kids. I enjoyed it.
Man, so let me stop you for a second and ask a question about this, because I mean, similarly to you, right? I was a student pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working with all sorts of teens. You were working with only the disgruntled ones.
Right.
So not exactly the same, but I'm always curious to know, right? Because what I noticed when I pastored was how disinterested at times it felt like the parents were from the lives of their kids.
Right.
And like they're just kind of going through the motions, like they're there, but they're not really present. And so what did you feel like, dealing with the disgruntled youth that were probably most misunderstood? What was the kind of common factor that you saw in like their upbringing or in their family life that kind of led them to ultimately find themselves in the facility with you?
I think the majority of it, because this was early 90s to the late 90s. But I still think the same opportunities and the same circumstances apply today. Broken homes, disinterested in school, not performing well in school. And so what do you do with those kids? What do you do with these kids? And so when I found myself working especially in the juvenile detention center, when I found myself working in there, these were your typical kids that just wanted that attention, needed that nurturing. And I think a lot of times in life, we want to tell kids what to do instead of listening to what they want to do. They are gifted and talented. They're gifted and talented just like everyone else.
Yeah.
And so I often share that kids want to be led. They don't want to be managed. And so when you give them an opportunity to be heard, they can flourish, they can blossom.
Yeah.
So watching them go through those struggles, because I worked with 5-year-olds all the way up until high school age. And the common thread was just that affirmation that I belong, that affirmation that I am in the room, that affirmation that I am important. It was huge for me in the sense that growing up, the youngest of 4 boys, I didn't have my brothers, but I had great friends right down the street. And so that's what I tried to be in the midst of that.
Man, that's powerful. And so how many years were you in the juvenile side of all of this?
I worked 2 jobs. I worked the juvenile detention center and the mental health hospital. I worked those 2 jobs for 8 years. And so it wasn't what I picked. I was thrown into it. But as I've matured, I've learned that's where I was called to be, was to serve people.
And so tell us a story of one of the teenagers that was in the juvenile side or a patient from the mental health side. Like, can you share a quick story of like the impact that you were able to make in one of their lives by just being present and probably one of their most painful moments?
Yeah, for some reason throughout my entire career, and even since I'm in corrections now, but there was this one guy, one kid, he was a teenager, and he wasn't an athlete, he wasn't popular in school, didn't have a lot of friends, but I could see that he had a lot of potential to be great. He was an artist, he loved to draw. And there was a coworker of mine, his name is Damon. And we kind of took to this kid because everyone was afraid of him because he was a bigger kid. So he was making it through by fighting, by beating people up. But really, he really didn't want to fight. He was just acting out. And I learned that when people are acting out, it's because they're not being heard most of the time. Not all the time. Most of the time, they just want to be heard. And so when we began just sitting and listening to him, letting him vent, he began to make great strides, great progress. He started enjoying his treatment.
Wow.
So much so that today I think he's doing pretty good today.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
And so how do you decide, I love the word potential, and the sad side to that word, right, is unrecognized potential or wasted potential. And so how, like, what was it specifically in him that caused you to see that potential when he'd probably been written off by so many people in his life?
I think one of the things that made me realize that he had potential was he didn't always ask questions. You know, most people ask questions when they want to know something.
Yeah.
He didn't ask questions, but he was always nearby listening to me and Damon's conversations. And that was, at that age, that was pretty unique for me, because most teenagers, they don't want to hear what 24, 25-year-olds are talking about at that age.
Sure.
And so I used that as an opportunity, as a means to really pull him in and to encourage him to make some changes, that he can do better.
Yeah.
That life doesn't happen to you, life happens for you.
Yeah. And that's powerful, right? Because what I heard you just say was curiosity.
Absolutely.
Right? That just his willingness to just lean in ever so slightly, to just be able to tell that, like, he was interested in learning and growing and hearing about another way.
Right. Absolutely. Whenever most children feel that they're available and know that you're available,
yeah,
they'll open up to you. They'll cling to you. They'll want to learn from you. They'll listen. Yeah. And so
I'm so excited. You know, I'm excited for parents to watch this, right? Because I try to bring people on here, right, from all walks of life that are totally different. That's not necessarily about what I do for a living.
Absolutely.
Right? But it's truly about, like, getting people's stories out there, because you never know who you're going to connect to.
Absolutely.
All right. So you did that for 8 years. So that took you, what'd you say, from like the late 90s to what, the mid 2000s?
It took me to about, in 1997, I started really kind of trying to figure, hey man, you need to get your life in order. Again, I was raised in a church. I was married. We had 2 boys at the time. I married my junior high sweetheart. We're still married today.
Man, come on.
We have 2 boys. Well, they're young men now. They'll be 29 and 25, 30 and 25 this year.
Oh my gosh.
But around 1996, 97, I started thinking, man, I really need to move into a career. Because while I was working, I didn't have insurance, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But because I didn't finish school and really wasn't in the school, the next step for me was corrections. I had the experience. I was doing counseling, even though I wasn't a certified counselor.
Yeah, sure.
So my transferable skills led me to corrections.
And so explain to us, like, kind of visually paint a picture of like really what corrections looks like. What does your day-to-day look like? How safe is it? You know, give us some of those details.
In 1997, when I joined the state of Texas Prison Penal Institution, I went to a clinic training for 5 weeks. And you're just down there, you're learning all the language, you're learning the rules and regulations, the policies and procedures. And then they take us to this unit right across the street. And I can't remember, I think there was like 40, maybe 45 people in our class. They took us to that unit for the very first day. You walk inside the prison unit, and the sound of that prison door crashing behind you when you walk in.
Oh my gosh.
It's a sound you'll never forget. It's loud, it echoes, the smell. It's something that if you go in, you'll never really truly forget. It's impactful.
I bet.
So grateful for me, I had some experience, working with the juveniles, the behavior, the fights, the chaotic scene. I had some experience. That first night when we went back, there was about 5 people who left in the middle of the night and never returned.
Yeah, that would have probably been me. So
absolutely,
I would have been one of those 5 for absolutely. Sure. and so then what does the day-to-day look like for that position?
Well, when I left the training, I went to a unit. We call it a 2250, meaning it has 2,250 inmates on the unit. And so you have 2 separate sections to the prison. You have one they call general population. That's where the inmates are usually up and around. They're just walking. And then you have something called administration segregation. That's where the inmates are locked up for 23 hours a day. They only come out for 1 hour a day. And they're usually in there for some kind of disciplinary conduct.
Yeah.
And I got picked to go work back there where they're at 23 hours a day. They come out 1 hour a day. to go to rec and then go to shower and they go back to their cell.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that those are those some of the tougher guys that are in there because they're in there for disciplinary reasons?
Majority are. Some are for protection. Some are because they're just being transferred. They're moving from unit to unit. So there's several different reasons why they can be placed back there. They may be gang affiliated, but there certainly is a dangerous aspect to being back there because they're in that cell 23 hours a day, and their number one thing that they have is time on their hands. So they're watching you as much as you're trying to watch them.
Right, man. So tell us a story. Like I don't even want to lead you into like what story you should tell. But just like, whet our palate for something that you've seen or that you've been a part of, behind those gates.
My first negative or my first wow experience was I was there maybe 3 weeks. That's a little less than a month I was there. And we were getting ready to feed. There's 84 cells in the unit where we were working. You have 2 rows, so there's 42 cells upstairs and 42 cells downstairs. Single man cells. We're feeding them. We usually give them about 15 minutes to eat. So we pass out the trays for them to eat. We give them 15 minutes to eat, and then we go back in to pick them up, right? By the time we go back in to pick the trays up, one of the inmates was hanging. And that really was my initiation into corrections. That was,
my gosh.
But again, I was able to rely on some of my past experience of not just totally saying, man, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
So that was that was something that I will always remember.
Man, so in that environment that 99% of humans will never know, how do you make a positive impact in that type of environment?
There are more than 2 million people incarcerated in the United States.
Wow.
Close to 200,000 of those men and women are incarcerated over about 106 different prisons here in Texas.
Okay.
And so that's a great question because the uniform and the environment is not set for you to help them, assist them, make it through their day. And I've always respected my uniform, but at the same time, I never changed myself as far as how I interact and handle people. So for 21 years, I've never had an issue with asking or getting an offender to do what I wanted them to do, because at the end of the day, they're human. They made a mistake.
Yeah.
And so my approach has always been, if I ask you to do something, just do it. I was never the type of person to go in and just yell and scream at you because I know you can't do anything to me, or if you do,
sure.
So I was always just, treated them like a human because I want to treat people like I wanted to be treated.
Yeah. And man, that's so powerful. Just in the world we live in right now, most people treat other people like trash.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it blows my mind.
Absolutely.
And I did a video the other night sitting on my back porch talking about the difference between honor and respect.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And how often people are like, well, I don't respect that guy. I don't respect that girl. Like they did this or they did that. And my perspective is that as human beings, like God has called us to honor people.
Right.
And it doesn't have to do with authority necessarily. It doesn't even necessarily have to do with position, but because like you are made by God in his image, you are worthy of my honor, and your actions should not dictate that.
Right. I agree with that 100%.
And I think it's powerful. Well, I think it would be powerful. Like, what would our world look like if that's truly the perspective that people had? And man, it's crazy. And so what, like, in all this time, 20 plus years doing this, you've raised 2 boys that are both grown men now. You've successfully stayed married.
Yes.
for a long time. What has working in the prison system, like, what has it taught you about life?
Wow, that's a great question. It's taught me that life is truly vapor because I've seen lost life in the prison,
Yeah.
um, and not only physically, mentally. Um, I've seen loss of just drive, loss of willingness to leave. You talk about suicide. Suicide is off the charts depending on what time of year it is.
Yeah.
Um, and so just trying to be a light in a dark place, not saying, hey, I'm a man of faith over here. I just tried to walk it, tried to
Yeah.
be an example, um, not only for the inmates, but for my coworkers as well. I've had some tremendous relationships built with coworkers, supervisors that were above me and coworkers on the same level as me, um, and just tried to be an influence everywhere I go. I always wanted to be an influence when I walk in a room, not a distraction.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. I think what I heard you say was, like, quit talking about who you want to be and just be it.
Absolutely.
You know, especially in our faith, right? I talk to so many people that I'll get to know, and then somehow in conversation they'll tell me that they're a Christian, and my first thought is, "You are? Man, I've known you for like a year, and
Right,
nothing that you do or say
right,
in the slightest way resembles who I
right.
believe Jesus to be." And so I think that's powerful, man, to just be willing to be that.
You almost have to when you're working in a prison setting,
Yeah.
because again, these guys don't go home. These women do not go home. They stay there. So there's 3 shifts depending on what kind of unit you're on. They know who's coming to work. They know who's leaving. They know what day you're off. They know what day you're working. All they have is time to observe.
Man.
They're counselors and don't really know it. They're psychologists and don't really know it because that's all they do is they watch, they watch, they watch, they watch. And so, like you just said, if you're saying you're a Christian, those type of people that are incarcerated, male and female, they know if you are or not. You don't
Yeah.
have to say it. Yeah,
Yeah, no doubt. Man, that's awesome. And so why did you choose, right? So we both were at John Maxwell,
absolutely.
and we both, valued the certification to be able to, leverage his material. What was that big reason, why did you choose to go there and partake in that?
I my father, excuse me, my mother fought cancer for about 10 years, and in 2003, she really took a dive for the worst. And because I hadn't finished school, my mother had graduated. She had her degree. My father went back to school and got his degree.
Yeah.
My 3 brothers had their degrees. They're pastors, preachers. And my mother, that was her wish. Kevin, just please go back to school, finish school, get your degree. And
Okay.
at that time, my walk with Christ, it was growing, and I was running from pastoral leadership, from preaching, and I was running. But I knew I had a hunger, and I wanted to grow in my study. So I was going to a school called the College of Biblical Studies, and I was still working with the prison system. So in 2004, while I was there, they brought out a disc profile, and in one of my leadership training classes, they had some John Maxwell material. So that was my first exposure to
Okay.
John Maxwell's material was back in 2004. Um, and then about 2 years ago, I've always wanted to own my own business. And so when I started planning for retirement and my next transition, um, I've been an athlete all my life. I still referee basketball every weekend.
Okay.
I always wanted to open a gym, but I always knew that there was something more for today's athletes. Your talent will only take you so far.
So true.
Um, and I like to share with these kids that your talent will get you recognized, but your character will cement your legacy. So
Mm.
when the John Maxwell team information came across my path, it was a no-brainer for me to jump on board and have the opportunity to add leadership and development to the kids that I'm training, to the kids that I'm officiating, because I just love adding value to people. And so when the John Maxwell team information came across my desk, my window, I shared it with my wife, and the decision was very easily, actually.
And so what does that look like for you now with that new business? You know, is like, what's your ideal client look like? You know, what sort of things are you offering for them?
My ideal client right now, man, is learning how to add my transferable skills in chaotic situations. Culture diversity, I've been through that in prison, working with employees and inmates, coaching people, mentoring people, discipling people, counseling people. And so when I came to the John Maxwell team, I realized that, man, I'm truly a hybrid mess. I've heard my mentor, Chris, say he's a hybrid mess when it comes to coaching. And so when you talk about coaching in its pure essence, that's the direction I'm going in now, to fine tune that area, because I love helping people. The one-on-one conversation we're having right now, that's ideal for me. So one-on-one coaching, group coaching, whether it's personal, whether it's in a business setting, I'm looking forward to launching out in those arenas.
Man, I love it. That's awesome. And so, man, I am, again, I'm so grateful for your willingness to just jump on here with me. And
Absolutely.
I'm excited to get in person again sometime. I'm sure we're going to figure it out sometime. But I want to remind people real quick. So first, if somebody wanted to contact you and talk to you about your services that you have, any of that stuff, like, what would be the easiest way for them to reach out to you?
They can go to expandmygrowth.com, EXPANDMYGROWTH, expandmygrowth.com.
Okay.
And you'll find all my information there, because
Boom.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. And guys, I want to remind you real quick, I wrote down three big takeaways that I'll be writing a blog about later that Kev said. And so just so you guys remember when you're watching this, this is what I took away. Do you lead or manage? That was a big takeaway for me. Do you talk at or speak to people?
Wow.
That was something I heard you say. And then the last thing I heard you say, which is what we're going to end on, is your talent will get you recognized, but your character will cement your legacy.
Yes, sir.
And so for those of you watching, man, what are you focused on? Are you just fueling your talent to get you somewhere fast, or are you building your character so that where you get, you can stay?
Yes.
Because that's what it's about. And so I appreciate you guys watching and hanging out with us on episode number 3 of Storytellers. I'm Coach Kyle. And to remind you guys, I get asked all the time, man, what do you actually do? I see you on video all the time. I am a keynote speaker. And so I love to come in and speak at events,
Absolutely.
speak in brokerages, in companies. All right. And then I also do one-on-one coaching. But my coaching is unique because my coaching is about content. Because nobody knows how great you are until you get yourself out there. And so if you struggle with getting yourself out there, with knowing what to talk about, with knowing how to leverage video in your business, that's what I do. So I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And I'll see y'all soon for episode number 4 of Storytellers. See ya.